are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Christine Friend at Irvine Valley College. The California Career Cafe team is really excited to bring you this new series of webinars focusing on career pathways. These webinars and the great resources on our cafe are brought to you through SB 1070 funding from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. I'm just going to take a brief moment to go over some technical details of the webinar, and then we'll get started. The entire webinar is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on the Career Briefs website. That's cacareerbriefs.com, and the link will be provided again at the end of the webinar. So quickly, you should have you should see a panel exactly like this one. In the right side of your computer to monitor. If you don't see it, then look for this small group of icons in the top right corner. If you click on the double arrow, it should expand the control panel out. If you have any questions for me, some technical question, please type it in the questions box right here, and I will respond as quickly as I can. If it's a question for our presenter today, please feel free to send those questions and he will answer them at the appropriate time. But just quickly now, I'd like to introduce Rita, a woman who needs no introduction, Rita, so she can introduce our presenter. Rita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Christine. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased you've joined us. This is a really important webinar for us because I feel that it sets such a foundation for everything that we're about. And it's really my pleasure to introduce our presenter today. Bill Symonds is the director of the Global Pathways Institute and professor of practice at Arizona State University. The Global Pathways Institute was created in 2014 to help lead a national movement to find effective solutions to our failure to prepare many young people to lead successful lives. Now, prior to coming to ASU, Symonds was director of the Pathways to Prosperity project at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I know many of you have heard of the report that he authored, which is Pathways to Prosperity, Meeting the Challenge of Preparing Young Americans for the 21st Century. Now, Bill believes that one of the greatest weaknesses in our current education system is the lack of attention to career development. Last July, I attended the National Career Development Association convention, and Bill was actually our keynote. He gave the keynote address calling for a national movement to make career literacy a central focus of our education system. Now, because of that, NCDA is now partnering with the Global Pathways Institute to organize a national meeting for that coalition. That meeting is expected to be held in February 2016, and I'm sure Bill will mention that during his presentation. I was very impressed with Bill's leadership and his message when I heard him in July. And I know that you, as I was, are going to be called to action after hearing his presentation today. So, Bill, I would like to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for your willingness to join us today. It's all yours.
Well, thank you, Rita. It's really my pleasure to be with you today, and hopefully the technology is going to work well as we go through this webinar. As Christine said, we hope to make this as interactive as possible, and this presentation is sort of organized into several chunks, and after each one, I'll take questions relating to what I've already talked about rather than wait till the end. So if I'm talking and questions come up about what I'm talking about, please type in your question, then do not wait till the end. So we'll try to handle it in order. You know, to get going, I thought to put this in context, you know, I'm based at Arizona State, and it just so happens that yesterday I had a meeting with Career Services here at ASU, which is now the largest public university in the U.S. And what they were telling me is that every year about 1,000 freshmen arrive on campus who actually haven't declared a major, undeclared, so they haven't specified any direction on what they're going to do. On top of that, many students, when they apply, say they're going to major in political science or theater or whatever it is, they put that down, but then after they arrive, decide they want to change majors, and often dramatically. And that affects at least half the students. So what you see is there's a tremendous percentage of the students who really are very uncertain about why they're at the university, what they're trying to accomplish, what their career direction is, et cetera. And that's why I think career development is so critical to the work we're trying to do. I mean, everybody has embraced the goal that we need more students to graduate with degrees or certificates at the community college level or a 4-year degree or higher. But if you don't have a direction, that education may not be very productive in terms of leading you to career success. So I can't think of a more important subject to talk about today. And the PowerPoint we're using today is actually the one I used when I spoke to the NCDA Global Conference in Denver. So to get started, I just want to give you a little background about the Global Pathways Institute. You know, my background is that I spent much of my career working for Business Week magazine and covered pretty much every industry under the sun. I was based in 5 different bureaus, including 10 years outside the U.S. And that led me to a great interest in that the most important thing companies need are really human talent. That's really what separates successful companies from those that aren't successful. And that led me to a great interest in the role of business in education reform. In 2006, I left Business Week and went to Harvard and started researching this area. And that led to the formation of the Pathways to Prosperity Project in 2008. I was the director of that, and what we were trying to do is answer the question of why our education system isn't doing a better job of preparing young people for success. And right now, only about 30% of young Americans get a 4-year degree. And of course, there's a huge problem of underemployment among young people. And so we wrote the Pathways to Prosperity report to address that question, which said really we need to change our whole culture of education. And I'll be talking about that today. And then as that project wound down, we worked to create an institute, and a group of leaders here in Arizona said, why don't we base it in Arizona at Arizona State, which, by the way, was just voted as the most innovative university in the United States. So some funds were raised, and I moved out here. We established the institute, and we're off and running. So our vision at the Institute is that we're committed to creating an America in which all young people are prepared to lead productive and successful lives. Now, that might seem like apple pie, but that's really different from how we've often defined the goal of education. Often, our goals are defined in terms of attainment. You know, we want everybody to graduate from high school, or we want as many people as possible to get an associate's degree or a 4-year degree. And what we're doing is looking beyond that goal to what happens after they graduate. Are they really prepared to lead a successful life? And I would argue that if they've had the education but they haven't been prepared, you know, we really haven't met our goal. So when I talk about this, I like to cite examples from my own family, so I'm not picking on anybody else. But one example I'd cite is a niece I have. And so she said that she would really be interested in becoming an actress. She was going to go to Broadway. But when she did that, and she went to a private school to get that degree, nobody was really counseling her that, you know, the odds of making it to Broadway are really low, and you ought to have Plan B. She didn't get any guidance like that at all. Today, she's in her late 20s, and she's teaching yoga at $25 a lesson with no benefits whatsoever. So she's actually living in poverty. So that's the kind of problem I think that we have right now if we just focus on degrees. She got her college degree, so she met that goal. The problem is she really wasn't prepared to lead a successful life. And the second part of our vision is that we believe that providing young people with high-quality multiple pathways is the best way to help them discover and develop their potential and achieve economic independence. So multiple pathways means you know, more than one pathway, and not just focusing on the 4-year college. So as all of you know, in California, the community college system is far more important than the UC system, although the UC system is what gets most of the attention. You know, community college is really the system that's serving far more students and adults and helping them to achieve prosperity. The problem is because we put so much emphasis on the 4-year degree, community college is often viewed as a second-class option. Nothing could be further from the truth in terms of preparing people for the workforce, but that's how many people look at it. And I've gone to many, many community colleges, and I've really sensed that stigma among the students. And so that's one of the things we need to change. We're going to tackle this problem. So when we created the Institute, we thought, what would it take to really achieve systemic change and prepare far more students for economic success? And we came up with four main pillars of work. The first is research. Everything we do should be informed by high-quality research, so we're not repeating mistakes. We're really moving forward. Secondly, we need an effort to communicate why we need to take a different approach to education, and I'll be talking about that more today. We need to collaborate. If we're going to solve this problem, we need to work together. So education can't solve this alone. We need to work very closely, for example, with the business community. And finally, convene. We need to bring leaders together and talk about how we can do a better job of advancing the mission. And on that point, in May, we had our inaugural Southwest Pathways Conference. It was held here at Arizona State, May 28th and 29th. We had teams from five states attend this year: Colorado, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, and Arizona. And it was sold out. We had 350 people here. If you go to our website, you can learn more about the conference. What I wanted to say is we've already announced that our next conference is going to be next May 2 to 4 here in Arizona, and we're going to include California this year. This would be a great opportunity for some of you who are listening to attend the conference, really work with your colleagues from across the Southwest on how we can create a more effective pathway system. It's really an exciting event. We've got a lot of speakers, not only from the Southwest, but national leaders. And you can go to our website and learn more about that. So today, what I want to talk about is, first of all, why are we failing so many young people, so many students? And how can we help prepare them to achieve the American dream? So I think in one sentence, what this is all about is the fact that the American dream has become so elusive for many people today. It really is a national tragedy. And how can we solve that? And what I would argue is that what I call career literacy is actually critical to solving this, the work that you're doing every day in career development. And what I want to talk about is what we mean by career literacy and the key components if we're really going to launch this and make this an effective movement. The final thing is the need for a national movement. Now, as Rita said, when I gave the keynote address at the NCDA convention in Denver, I issued a call to do that. And since then, it's really coming to fruition. So the United States Chamber of Commerce has agreed to host this meeting. And I think that's really important. That's the largest business organization in the United States. Their offices are right across the street from the White House, although they often don't agree with the current president. And we're going to bring people together right there in that setting to talk about why we need to put a lot more emphasis on career development. And we're getting some really exciting partners that are going to join with us. For example, America's Promise Alliance is very eager to get involved, and I think a number of you have seen their work in California and elsewhere as they've helped build a national coalition on the issue of the high school dropout challenge. So that's coming up on February 22nd. That's going to be an invitation-only meeting, but those of you who are interested in getting involved should let me know, because we definitely want to have a strong group from California involved in this. And we're going to be talking about career literacy both at the K-12 area, but also in post-secondary education. So to start with, let's talk about the Pathways Challenge, what I call the Pathways Challenge, and really our failure to prepare young people for success. So I think that to put this in context, think about the history of America, which was long known as the land of opportunity. People came here often with no possessions, no belongings, out of the belief that if they did, they would have a chance to succeed and build a better life for themselves. Today, that dream has really become an illusion for many people. USA Funds calls it the 40-50 problem. 40% of the people who enter post-secondary education, including at four-year schools, don't graduate. We have the world's highest college dropout rate and, of course, massive student debt. And 50% of those who do graduate end up underemployed or unemployed. In other words, they've got a degree, but like my niece, they really aren't utilizing the degree. She's living in poverty. And at the same time, business leaders are saying we face a massive skills gap. They cannot find the people they need to do the job. So one example of that, I just did an interview with Chemical Engineering News, and they see a tremendous looming shortage of chemical engineers, as well as the skilled technicians who work in chemical plants. And that's a critical industry. It's obviously vital to the way of life we have today, and yet that need is not being met. Right now, there's a lot of very talented baby boomers in the industry, but of course they're going to be retiring, and they don't see the pipelines to replace them. So the other aspect of this is the persistence of poverty, and that's very, very evident in California, as I'm sure many of you are dealing with every day. For the first time in 50 years, the majority of U.S. school children now qualify for free and reduced price lunch. We haven't seen that since the civil rights era. And 1 in 7 young adults are not in school or employed. Those are the so-called disconnected or opportunity youth, really a massive problem. Bob Putnam at Harvard wrote a book about this that came out earlier this year called Our Kids. And if you're interested in learning more about the origins of this problem, I'd really recommend that book. What he points out is that in the 1950s, America offered extraordinary upward mobility to pretty much all school children. And in the town where he grew up in Ohio, pretty much everybody in his high school class achieved the American dream of a middle-class lifestyle, even though most of them did not go to college. Today, however, he's warning that if we don't take action, social mobility is going to plunge, and the American dream is going to become even more elusive. So that's the problem that we're facing as a society. So why are we in this situation? And I would argue is a key problem is that our paradigm for addressing this challenge is really wrong. Our worldview is mistaken. And we've embraced the idea that a 4-year college degree is really the only true pathway to success. Now, I'm not saying 4-year college is bad. Obviously, it's not bad. It opens the door to many tremendous careers and really can help inform someone's life going forward. It's a wonderful institution. The problem is we've oversold it as the only way going forward. Research done by Gallup indicates that more than 90% of parents believe their children should go to a 4-year college. And of course, as we already mentioned, only about 30% actually get a 4-year degree. So if that's your belief, if your belief is we're going to solve this thing by sending everybody to a 4-year college, that means that high school should be about preparing students to enter the 4-year college, what you call in California the A to G requirements. It also means that alternatives like community and technical colleges are far less prestigious, and that career and technical education should be reserved for students who can't hack it in an academic 4-year environment. That's the paradigm that we've pretty much embraced as a country. The problem is the evidence is overwhelming. I don't think there's any debate that just isn't working. So if we look at high school, for example, ACT reports that only 25% of the students who graduated last year were actually fully college ready. Many students, of course, go to college, especially community colleges, who aren't college ready, and they end up taking remedial courses. Very few of those students ever go on to get a degree. There's also a huge achievement gap. While 44% of white students were college ready, only 16% of Hispanic students were, and only 8% of Native Americans. And by the way, one of the reasons we hold the Southwest Pathways Conference is because in this region of the country, the Latino and Native American population is massive. That's really, in Arizona, accounts for the majority of students today in our school system. And it's obviously true in Southern California as well. Very, very evident. So the other aspect of this is because we focus so much on the 4-year college degree, we've ignored the issue of career readiness. We hardly even measure that. And so the fact that we've embraced this paradigm that's not working, I think is a key cause of the problem and the crisis we're really facing as a country. This graph here just shows the fact that even though we encourage so many students to go to college, many of them don't graduate or certainly don't graduate on time. 56% graduate on time at 4-year schools. That's in 6 years, by the way. That's considered on-time graduation. Only 29% at 2-year colleges. Of course, that's counting students who get an associate's degree, and many students at community colleges are actually looking for a certificate or something less than an associate's degree. So the other aspect of this is, what does the labor market require? And I think this is a big misunderstanding. The reality is that most jobs in California and in the rest of the country do not require a four-year college degree. This pie chart shows that about a third of the jobs do require that. Another 30% require some college or an associate's degree. That's where the community college system comes in. And so if you look at that chart, you'll see that really the role that you play in the community college system preparing people for the workforce is vitally important, really the equal of the four-year system. And in many states, the role of the two-year degree or credentials is actually more important than that of the four-year college. Again, that's something that many policymakers and certainly many parents don't understand. So, summing up this portion, then we're going to take any questions that have come up. The question is, why are we failing so many young people? And our conclusions are, first of all, the one road to have an approach is far too narrow and simply doesn't work for many students. We've adopted that paradigm, but it's not sufficient to prepare everybody for success. I think the other key point is that by overemphasizing the four-year college, we've adopted an elitist view of both education and the workforce. So what's happened is that increasingly we look up to professions that require a four-year degree. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, we look down on those which require advanced technical skills but not a four-year degree. And what that means is that many young people are dismissing, or their parents are dismissing, jobs that would actually offer a middle-class salary, vitally important to our society, but which don't require a four-year degree. And so we're writing off or are demeaning many jobs that actually would allow you to achieve a middle-class lifestyle because of that elitism. And so what we're saying is if we want to solve this problem, and it's one of the biggest problems facing the country, we need a new approach, and a key part of that is to champion the dignity of work. So, Christine, do we have any questions at this point?
None so far, Bill.
Okay, so we're going to move right along, and don't hesitate to ask questions as they come up. The next segment of this, we're going to be talking about the concept of career literacy, and I'm sure everybody involved in this webinar has been, very involved in career development for a long time. So how do we come up with the term career literacy? What happened is, after the Institute was launched, we had a national meeting in Washington of really leaders in the field, and we talked about where we are today. And as you know, career development doesn't get anywhere near the emphasis that it should in preparing young people for success. And we talked about terminology, which is often, critically important in terms of driving an agenda. And the point was made that among the general public, even among many educators, the term career development isn't very well understood. The term career guidance implies that a counselor or somebody else might be telling a student what to do. And that rubs many people the wrong way. So the suggestion was made, what about the term career literacy? And the argument was made that literacy is a term that has a very positive connotations. Many people like the concept of literacy. Obviously we want everybody to be literate. In the health community, they've developed the term of health literacy, which has gotten a lot of traction. So we came up with this idea of career literacy, and we're defining that as equipping students and adults, for that matter, with the knowledge, tools, and support they need to make a good career decision, and that to then discover the best pathway to that decision. For many of them, as we've discussed, that would be attending a community college. So we think career literacy has broad appeal, and that's what we're trying to do, is mount a campaign that more people are going to embrace this. The terminology aside, the goal is really to promote career development as a far more central part of our education system. So the reality is that that's not what we're doing today. We put far too little emphasis on career development. At the K-12 level, we have very few counselors. In Arizona, the ratio is about 800 to 1. I think in California, it's close to that as well. That staggering workload means that one-to-one attention simply isn't possible for many students. Not only that, very little time is devoted to career development. When you talk to students on an anecdotal basis, many say that they have little or no attention to what are they going to do with themselves after they leave school, other than go to college. And higher education resources are also severely constrained, especially at the community college level. And that means, again, that many students don't get the help they need to try to figure out what would make sense, what are the careers they might consider, what are the best pathways to those careers. So here's some research that McGraw-Hill did on the situation in higher education. So what this shows is that students overwhelmingly feel that post-secondary education should adequately prepare them for the workforce, but it also shows that right now they feel like they're not getting the help they need. Overwhelming dissatisfaction. And by the way, surveys that Gallup has done of employers show that the vast majority feel that the students they're hiring have not been effectively prepared for the workforce. So there's a real mismatch between the need on the one hand and what's actually happening because we haven't prioritized career development. So what are the costs of this? I think the costs are actually massive. First of all, it relates directly to the problem of student engagement. And we all know as educators that if students aren't engaged, they aren't likely to learn that much. And so research done by Gallup shows that in elementary school, the vast majority of students are engaged. They are curious, they want to learn. By the time we get to high school, less than 1 out of 2, less than half are really fully engaged. Those who are engaged start asking questions about why do I need to learn this? They aren't excited about what's going on in the classroom, and the result is that many of them, another result of that is that many of them make poor choices about their next step. Where they should go to college, what kind of college they should go to, and what they should study when they get there. And that means that many college students are just wandering through the system. They're in college, but they really don't know why they're there. And of course, if you don't know why you're there, you're not really getting prepared for to have a great job when you get out of college. So what we're proposing is that we make career development, career literacy a central goal of education. And what would that look like if we did that? In the K-12 system, it would mean we'd start early, talking to students about the idea they can be successful, that if they develop a plan, the American dream is still possible for them to achieve, and they can escape poverty. At the post-secondary level, the goal would be completion with a purpose, that you're not only going to get a degree, but it's going to lead to a great career or help you get launched on a great career, whether that's a credential or a degree. A second element of this is we're going to adopt a much more collaborative approach. We're going to involve the entire school community. So on the K-12 level, that would mean not just the counselors, but also the teachers are going to be involved in this effort to talk to students about what they can achieve. And we're also going to engage the broader community, the business community, parents, and other organizations. Here in Arizona, for example, we're working with retirees and getting them involved as mentors to work with students. And finally, we're going to embrace the concept of work-based learning, which is really the gold standard in terms of career development. You know, if a student is interested in an area, whether it's engineering, auto mechanics, or whatever it might be, if they actually get out of the classroom and into the work world and experience that directly, they're going to figure out very quickly, is this something they're interested and excited about doing? And if they are, there's nothing better than work-based learning to help them learn about the field, what skills they need to master, etc. It's really the gold standard, but we haven't put enough emphasis on that. So last year, as I said, we had a national dialogue on all of these issues, and that's where the concept of career literacy was developed. Another conclusion we reached is how little money we devote to this. It's like a black hole in our education system. You know, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year on education, but we spend the equivalent of 1 can of Coke per student on career development. Think about that. I mean, for each individual student, it's thousands of dollars every year, but only the equivalent of 1 can of Coke on what are you going to do with all the content you're learning. It's an incredible mismatch. And that's why we need a movement to change this picture. We need to change, go from an environment in which career development is ignored or just an afterthought to one in which it really helps inform the entire educational process. So a couple of the other conclusions we reached in this national dialogue, which, as I say, included many of the national leaders in career development, that counselors cannot do this work alone. Collaboration is going to be vitally essential. Technology, we've got a growing number of web-based tools to help guide students on career options, but that's not enough. Being able to work with a caring adult, whether that's a mentor, a teacher, or a counselor, is also vitally important. Another recommendation was that all teachers should be required to take a course in career development as part of their professional preparation. And finally, we need to greatly expand the availability of work-based learning. So why is work-based learning so important in this? And I think there's several reasons. Number one is it's certainly a proven way to promote engagement. Students who are actually in the workforce or are involved in projects related to that are far more excited and interested in what they're doing. And that's not an academic theory, that's actually been proven. The OECD did a massive multi-country study, and they found as a result of the study that students involved in work-based learning, whether that's an apprenticeship or an internship, actually learn far more than those who have nothing more than just a classroom experience. Of course, if you're in the workforce, you're going to develop a lot of key employability skills. Learn about the importance of showing up on time, being appropriately dressed, learning how to work as a member of the team, how to relate to your fellow employees. Those are things that cannot be taught in a classroom environment very effectively. And as I've said before, it's really the gold standard for career exploration. Once you're in that, working in a company, in the industry you're interested in, you're going to figure out very quickly, is this what I want to do? And if it is what you want to do, you're going to start perfecting the skills you need to succeed. Meanwhile, for the employers, this is really the gold standard for identifying effective employees. And last fall, I spoke at the Silicon Valley Internship Summit, Microsoft was one of the people that spoke there as well, and they said that they've concluded that by far their preference is to hire young people who've been interns at Microsoft, because that's really a way for them to judge whether or not they would be good members of the Microsoft team or not. And that's the key point. This is not charity. Setting up internship or apprenticeship programs is not charity. It's actually an incredible investment in the future of the company. So there are many types of work-based learning. It starts with exploration, career fairs, which I'm sure you have on your campuses, workplace tours and job shadowing, and then goes to more intensive forms, including internships, actual jobs, summer jobs and that kind of thing, and apprenticeships. And so I think the students you're dealing with, the internships and apprenticeships are really the way to go. And you know, the thing is, we do have some great examples of work-based learning in the United States. The world leaders are countries like Germany and Switzerland, which have really been working on this a long time. But here in the United States, we do have some institutions that have really embraced this heavily. BYU Idaho is one that we featured at the Southwest Pathways Conference. So the interesting thing is BYU Idaho is not located in a major city. It's in Rexburg, Idaho. That's a very small town. Fewer than 25,000 people live there. What happened is that about a decade ago, they brought in, as president of the college, the dean of Harvard Business School. Now, the reason they got the dean of Harvard Business School to move to Rexburg, Idaho, is that he's a Mormon. You know, BYU Idaho is a Mormon school. The church called on him to do this, and he answered the call. And once he got there, he transformed BYU Idaho from a conventional college into one that really embraces the concept of work-based learning. Today, 75% of the students there have meaningful internships or apprenticeships. And the result of that is they're getting better job offers than students at competing institutions. And I think it's very significant that a school located in such a remote area was able to do this. They did that by cooperating closely with the business community and hiring business executives to help promote these internships and find opportunities. So I think it's a great example of what can be done if we work on it. I think among industries, the healthcare industry is one that certainly appreciates the importance of clinical experience and offers many opportunities for that. But we need to expand that to a lot more industries as well. Obviously, apprenticeships are another great way to move forward. And there are other programs that have been developed at the K-12 level and also for re-engaging opportunity youth. So the challenge is, how do we take this to scale? How do we give a lot more students this kind of experience? And I think what we need to do is, and this is why we're holding the national convening, we need to persuade a lot more companies to participate in this work. We need to assist high schools, community colleges, and universities to offer such programs, and we ought to consider incentives to do this. because the bottom line is that this investment, while it might seem forbidding up front, is actually the return on that is going to be enormous. This really is the best way to identify the best future employees, and certainly the best way to help students figure out what they want to do and what direction their career should take. So why does all of this really matter? And I think the answer to that question is the research clearly demonstrates that if you focus on career development, students end up doing a lot better at the end of the day. And Gallup combined with Purdue University to do a really in-depth study of this. They surveyed 30,000 students who had graduated from schools like Purdue and a number of years ago. And they looked at those who were really thriving, those who were doing really well, satisfied with their life. And what they found was that the conventional things we think about, what school you went to, was it public or private, for example? Was it fancy or not so fancy? What was your grade point average? Those factors didn't actually have much bearing on how successful students were a number of years out. What did make a big difference were a couple of things. One is having a mentor, and the concept of a caring adult, critically important. Students who had a mentor or caring adult were more than twice as likely to be satisfied and thriving as those who didn't. Really important. And the second factor was whether they had an internship or a meaningful form of work-based learning while they were in college. Those students were far more likely to succeed than those who didn't. So I think that's really incredibly powerful evidence that the work you're doing, you're engaged in every day, is vitally important, not just in terms of student success in school, but what's going to happen to them 5, 10, 15 years down the road. How well they're going to do. I mean, it really is, it's just phenomenally impactful, and yet we put almost no resources or attention into it. We're ignoring one thing that could really make a significant difference in the lives of many, many students. So I think the good news is I think the tide is really beginning to turn. We're certainly hoping to lead that and drive the pace of change faster, but we see many signs of progress. At the K-12 level, about 38 states now have adopted individual learning plans. They call them by different names in different states, but the goal is that each student should develop a plan for moving forward, both academically and in terms of where they're going in career. Now, the problem is that while that's been mandated in many states, the adoption has not been very done with fidelity or with quality in many cases. It's more of a checkoff requirement in many schools than an actual central part of the curriculum. But nevertheless, at least the states have recognized this is something that's important. We've seen very rapid improvements in technology, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. I mean, what's available today is light years ahead of what was available 10 years ago in terms of learning about careers and connecting with others. And we're seeing expanding efforts to collaborate. Here in Arizona, we've launched a pilot project which brings in retirees to work with students and serve as mentors. Those are volunteers, by the way. And we're seeing growing efforts to engage business in this work. South Carolina, for example, passed a very extensive program which increased the number of counselors and really got business directly engaged in this work. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is also getting directly involved in these areas. A few years ago, they were focused primarily on No Child Left Behind and test scores and that kind of thing. Today, they're really working with business to figure out how they can improve the pipeline of talent. I think there's widespread recognition of the value of mentoring, and we have impressive evidence of the effectiveness of work-based learning. So these are all reasons to be hopeful, and they give us a solid foundation on which to move forward. By the way, I also talked about the alliance that Starbucks has formed with Arizona State, which allows students at Starbucks to get a online degree at ASU while they're employed at Starbucks. So that's an example of the kind of innovative partnership that's possible as we move forward, in which employers can partner with colleges and universities to develop a workforce. And I think the opportunity for that is far greater in community colleges than it is even in the four-year schools, because your students are much closer to entering the workforce. So a strong partnership with employers is really a way to ensure that the program is going to be effective and that the employers are going to find the people they really need to succeed. So we've also had growing calls for change. The Manufacturing Skills Standard Council has published a white paper, which is available on their website, Transforming Career Counseling, talking about all these issues. Last summer, CUDR hosted the International Symposium on Career Development, and the delegation representing the United States developed an action plan which mirrors what I'm talking about, calling for a national agenda to elevate career guidance and career counseling. So the way I concluded the keynote address was with a call to action. Let's launch a national movement to champion the goal of helping all students and adults become career literate. One of the ideas we suggested is, could we set a national goal that by 2025, every student in America is going to be career literate? And again, what that implies is they've got the knowledge, the tools, and the support they need to make a career decision. They are going to make the decision. It's not going to be a teacher, a principal, a professor telling them what to do. They're going to make that decision, but they're going to have the tools and support they need to make a good decision for their life and achieve the American dream. So if we're going to do that, what we need to do is build a broad coalition of champions. The National Career Development Association is involved in this movement and partnering with us. We want to get other educators involved, both at the K-12 and post-secondary level, but also the business community. That's why it's so significant that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has agreed to host this meeting. We want to get many community organizations, and by the way, civil rights organizations involved as well. Some civil rights organizations have bought into the idea that a four-year college is really the only pathway to success. Nothing could be further from the truth. And if we really want to expand economic advancement among the Latino and African American communities, they really need to embrace the multiple pathways approach. That's going to be far more effective. So, as I say, we're convening the national dialogue. It's going to be on February 22nd at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We're going to have room for a couple hundred people anyhow. It's going to be a day-long meeting, really exciting, many different stakeholders, and we certainly want to involve leaders from the community college system, as well as certainly a very strong team from California. So that's the presentation I had today. I'd also add that we're having the second annual Southwest Pathways Conference next May 2 to 4. Community colleges are going to be a key part of that. That's a conference that's more open enrollment, and if you're interested in attending that, please check our website. We'll be opening up registration in the near future. There's going to be a lot of very relevant material there for community colleges. So thank you very much.
Bill?
Yes.
We have a question. Earlier, you presented a slide with the McGraw-Hill study. Can you tell us where to find that?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where I got that reference. I do have a link to it. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly where it came from. I'm looking at a lot of research all the time. That was published earlier this year, though. Okay,
so if you find it, we can have Rita follow up.
Okay, sure.
Yes, Bill, if it's okay with you, this is Rita. What I would like to do is send out to all the people that are participated today an email that will send a link to your website. So if they're interested in either the May meeting or getting in touch with you in any way, I assume they can do that through the website. And also, I will Google and find out the information about that. The research that they wanted, and I'll send that link too, if that's okay.
We have another question.
Okay.
Common Core includes college and career guidance. What is being done to reach out to the K-12 system? Are there any model programs of transition services from high school to college in terms of career pathways?
Yeah, so there's many different elements to that. Common Core talks about college and career readiness. I think the reality is, unfortunately, it's often seen more about college readiness than it is about career readiness. We don't put anywhere near enough emphasis on career readiness or career awareness. And I think the two are integrally linked, because if somebody does have a career goal, they're more likely to be engaged, they're more likely to learn, and they're more likely to graduate. Now, saying that, I recognize that young people often change their mind. If they get older, mature, learn more about fields, they develop a different vision of what they want to do. But even so, I think students who start out with a vision are far more likely to succeed than those who have no idea what they're doing. And so that's one of the deficiencies of the way Common Core is being implemented. As far as career pathways go, there's very robust work being done across the country on strengthening pathways into careers in different industries. And many of those are linking high school to continuing education at the community college or four-year level. So there's a lot going on in that field. But what I think we need is a national movement to really prioritize all of this work.
Just a couple more questions. The partnership between Starbucks and ASU applies to all the employees, including some in California?
Yes, it definitely applies to California. You have to be working a certain number of hours. I think you have to be working at least 20 hours a week to qualify for that program. But it's a national program. It's not an Arizona program. It's a national program. And again, that's through ASU Online. They're not actually going to school in person at Arizona State. They're doing that online. But ASU is a major provider of online courses and degrees.
Okay. Our college needs to address student equity and achievement gap concerns. Can you recommend research sites that connect the benefit of career literacy and development as it relates to these populations?
I think that's a critically important issue. And one reason we convened the Southwest Pathways Conference is that here in the Southwest, the future has already arrived. Many of our states are already majority minority, or certainly moving in that direction, and that's certainly true of much of California. The reality is that we have tremendous achievement gaps and also a tremendous gap in terms of informing these students about how they can succeed. I think one of the real problems we have with growing income inequality is that students living in low-income environments, as many Latino students are, for example, aren't exposed to people who've been successful in their career. They're not aware of what these opportunities are, and so that's why providing high-quality career development is really a fundamental civil rights issue. And I think if we don't do it, we're just not going to achieve the goal of closing those achievement gaps. So, there's a lot of excellent research that's been done about the achievement gap. I think one issue we have is that there hasn't been anywhere near enough research done on the importance of career development, the impact it has, as well as work-based learning. That's because our system has been so oriented towards accountability, testing students and how do you raise test scores. We've ignored the issue of what happens if you emphasize career development, what happens if you have high-quality work-based learning. So one of the things we're trying to do is build a consortium of researchers interested in these areas and get some support for this work.
There was a meeting mentioned earlier in the webinar regarding NCDA and Global Pathways. Where can they find more information on this?
Okay, so we're going to be talking about that on our website. Also, I'll send a link to my I'll send in my email address to read us. You can share that with people on the webinar so they can connect with me directly. I want to caution that the February 22nd meeting at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce will be invitation only, but we are going to invite people from California. We certainly want some people from the community college system involved in the discussion. So we're looking for recommendations and interest from people who might want to be involved in that.
Okay, in the K through 8 level, what are some tools we can use to create career awareness? I know part of the Common Core curriculum in Next Generation Science, but some of our schools don't have much time to include these exploration resources.
Yeah, so that's a key issue, no time to talk about it. That's why we need to change the culture around education. This really needs to be a central focus, and I think it's so important, particularly with students in lower income environments, the idea that you can be successful, that if you can figure out a pathway and get the skills necessary to succeed, that you can achieve the American dream. I can't think of a more important message to convey to our students than that. Right now, we don't provide any time for that. And what I'm saying is that we need to make that a much more central part of the curriculum. At the K-8 level, it starts with awareness, the idea that you can achieve a dream, that you can become something, you can become successful. That's a vitally important message at the K-5 area. Then from grade 5 to 8, I think it needs to become more specific, exposing them to different career options and pointing out that if you want to go into one of the STEM fields, for example, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a veterinarian, whatever, you really are going to need that math and science to succeed, and that needs to start right now, not when you get in high school. Otherwise, you won't be prepared for those courses. So, yeah, I think we need to start this very early. If we wait until high school, it's too late. Many students have already tuned out, and they may not have the right background to go into a lot of these fields anyhow. So, yeah, it needs to start really very early.
Okay, we're finished with questions.
All right, I'll just thank you so much, Bill. This was just excellent. And to tell you the truth, many of us here on the call have been in this business for a long time, and it's so reassuring to me to have a leader such as you that's taking this to more of a national level. So thank you so much for attending. I will make sure to send out, I'll be in touch with you and send out some links to all the people that attended today. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. See you next time. It's back to you, Christine. Christine,
Rita, I'm
are you
here.
available?
Yes, I'm here.
Well,
Hi. I just want to thank everybody for coming today and to remind everyone to join us for our next webinar, which is going to be November 19th from 12 to 12:45. We should be sending out reminder registration links. And the webinar is being recorded, so you can revisit this webinar at any time at www.cacareerbriefs.com. Just give me a day or two to get it up on the Career Briefs website. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks to all.